happened last week. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Drake with Long Beach Local News. We're here today for our first episode of Meet the Candidate with Steven Estrada from District 1.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we are both masked here today because it is the COVID protocols as of today. Obviously, that is continuously changing, but we want to make sure that we're being safe and setting a right example for everybody. So just to get that out there before anything else. But thank you so much for being here. We are super excited to hear that you're running for City Council District 1. But, you know, let's hear a little bit about you. So where are you from? Are you from Long Beach? Are you from California?
Yeah, so I'm definitely from Southern California. I was born and raised here. I spent most of my time out in Riverside, actually. That's where I was raised. I ended up going to school at San Diego State. I dropped out because I couldn't afford it. Like a lot of kids here in Southern California, it was difficult for me to be able to afford college. I ended up joining the Army, and I spent about 4 years there. I ended up deploying twice to the Middle East, and I got back here. I went to Long Beach State, and honestly, I fell in love with the city. The city is everything that I can dream about. It's diverse, it's working class, and it's everything that I could want to see and raise a family. And so that's where I am now. I have a 6-year-old daughter that I love, and Long Beach is an excellent place for me to have her in. So that's kind of a background about me, and yeah, so that's where we are.
That's great. So, I mean, obviously right now with world events going on, the Middle East and, you know, U.S. military presence is a big topic. Do you feel that your military experience has anything to do with your wanting to or your, you know, potential performance as a city council member?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, being a member of the military, I was honored to serve my country. I learned a lot during that experience. I learned how to manage stress, how to deal with situations that are life-threatening at times. But one of the things I also learned was, you know, our responsibility as Americans, as people, you know, to understand what imperialism is. What does it mean to be an American and a working class American, and what it's like to serve your country and what exactly that means. And that's one of the motivating reasons for me to want to run. I believe in working class people here in Long Beach, and I want to be able to serve them and provide them with policy and the type of leadership that I want to see as a working person as well.
Great. Which is interesting because generally speaking, I think there's a overarching, you know, conceptualization of active duty and veterans, military people, tending to lean towards more of a conservative political stance and social stance. But your platform is just the opposite in a lot of ways, correct?
Yes,
if I'm not wrong?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So our platform is mainly, the way that I like to summarize our campaign, it's about creating a local government that's responsive to the needs of its citizens, right? A government that works for working people. And what does that mean exactly for us? That means providing resources and tools for neighborhoods and communities and residents to build wealth, to build safe and strong communities. What does that look like exactly for us? Again, it's providing direct monetary relief for the city's unemployed. It's providing job training programs for those who don't have the skills or the knowledge about, you know, for jobs and job opportunities. It's one of the huge parts of our platform is providing free public transportation as well to our city's working class people. So we believe it's the duty of local city government to give people the resources, to give people the knowledge and the tools and the material wealth to be able to build and grow and thrive. And that's how economies are raised. That's how neighborhoods grow economically. In District 1 in particular, this is a district that deals with tremendous amounts of poverty. And with poverty comes huge amounts of crime, huge amounts of environmental pollution, and honestly, a lot of political powerlessness. Communities that are not economically well off don't have a say in the way that the city is run. Unfortunately, I think a lot of politicians have used the District 1 in particular, City Council, as a stepping stone for something greater, right? For their own political careers. I'm not that type of candidate. You know, I consider myself a political outsider. I'm running because I really believe in what it is that we're supposed to do, and that's represent working people, that's represent the working class, and make sure that there is no poor people in a rich city. Long Beach is a rich city. We have resources, and there's no reason why there should be people out in the street. There's no reason that people don't have the resources that they need to build a healthy communities and raise their families here.
Well, speaking of our resources, just this past week, the City Council unanimously voted to pass the proposed budget from Mayor Garcia and their administration. So I'm assuming you're relatively familiar with their budget. Are you familiar with the people's budget that was proposed in contradiction to that?
Yes, I am very familiar.
So, how do you feel about the new budget?
Yeah, I think once again, I kind of hit on the notion that communities that are not economically well off and working people, if they don't have the type of resources, their voices are often blanketed, right? They're not listened to. Unfortunately, Long Beach is a city that's owned by developers, owned by big banks, or at least the political representation is. The people's budget is the voice of the community, and what we demand is more resources, more financial resources to fund programs that are good for working people and working communities. I believe Long Beach City Council and every member on it has contributed to this ongoing trend where we don't listen to working people, because ultimately they're not beholden to them. If you look at every one of these political candidates that have won repeatedly, you'll see a trend develop. And you'll see that CEOs and very wealthy people with very lengthy connections to places of power are the ones contributing to their campaigns. And if you're getting contributions like that, those are the people that you're beholden to, not working people. And that's the opposite of what my campaign is about. My campaign is about working people in power for the first time. And that's what it is, extending democracy, where you can actually, what you say matters, and your voice has sway in the community. So that's what our campaign is about. Our slogan is "Together we win," and that's what we plan on doing.
Yeah, I mean, you make an interesting point about the interconnection between and some of the cycles that we're seeing within city council and local government. I mean, a lot of the city council members currently sitting are very financially well off, and moreover, financially interconnected.
Yeah,
absolutely. Being interdependent on certain investments, selling certain investments to one another, profiting off of one another. So that would be a huge change and an important point that's not necessarily discussed very much. Some of the involvements financially and project-wise that they have personal interest in is affected by local government, which dabbles into the realm of corruption,
illegality. Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the new budget, there are a lot of complexities that people are worried about. But I think one of the biggest things that I've been made aware of by some of our readers and viewers is people being outraged at having the past 2 years of Black Lives Matter and other organizations demonstrating and protesting in the streets throughout the country, but even within just Long Beach, against police budget and spending. Some arguing to completely dismantle, some to defund, some to redistribute a portion of the funding. Yet the Long Beach City Council did just the opposite and raised the police budget by several $1 million. How do you feel about that?
Well, again, I think it's just more evidence that your say doesn't really mean much in the current system that we have. They're not beholden to you as a working person, your average citizen. They're not beholden to you. Here in District 1, there's 50,000 people in our district, right? 2,000 people voted. So they don't have any feelings of responsibility to you because they are getting they're winning elections through these enormous campaign contributions given by real estate developers and big banks. They don't have, when you go to the city hall, they don't feel like they have to listen to you. And that's a part of this political representation system, specifically under capitalism. And this is what I intend to try to shuffle things up a little bit. I'm not taking any contributions from real estate companies. I'm taking any contributions from large landlords or banks or anything like that. My campaign is beholden to working people alone. And when I hear that Long Beach City Council raises, Long Beach Police Department is notorious for having the least accountability, perhaps in the nation. They are responsible for endless amounts of lawsuits in terms of police brutality, violence. They've been accused of conducting illegal surveillance on people. And Long Beach City Council, again, is being irresponsible with their inability and inaction to hold people accountable. Long Beach not only demands shifting those resources from this bloated budget the Long Beach department has, but also accountability. And we saw that in the George Floyd movement. We have a lack of accountability, and we have a lack of priorities. If we truly care about crime, and this is something that I would like to say to City Council, to Mayor Zendejas, who's running as the incumbent in District 1, if you care about crime, then you will provide resources to communities, because that is what is at the root of crime. Police do not stop crime; they're there to react. If we want to cut crime out at the root, we end poverty in our district, where 1 out of 4 people are in poverty. We end poverty, we give them resources, we give them education, we make sure they're housed, make sure they have the material needs that they need. And that's how we end crime. That's how we stop. We don't need to contribute millions and millions of dollars to the police budget. So that's what I would say. I think it's a shame that they turn their ears to the people of Long Beach who demanded something.
Yeah, I mean, that seemed pretty evident if you had watched or participated or even were there at the last budget hearing when they passed and adopted this budget. I believe it was the Long Beach Immigration's Rights Coalition took a huge stand in support of the people's budget, which I was a little surprised at, not being necessarily within the political world, that there was no negotiation, there was no adoption of certain aspects of the people's budget. It was an either or situation, which seemed kind of surprising. And in addition, it was, like a lot of the city council decisions, a unanimous vote.
Yes.
So do you feel that has to do with this lack of voter efficacy in Long Beach?
I do think so. I think what we see in Long Beach is we have a city machine running, right? It's people who are connected and well off. They're influenced by, like I said, corporate banking, real estate developers. Those are the people with those connections. They find their way into city council some way or somehow. And there's little to no, there's no political diversity. There's not a lot of exchanging of ideas. They're there with a specific goal, and that goal rarely leads to working people's interests. It's usually for small, specific amount of people. Typically, police unions have a huge amount of sway in city council. Real estate developers have a huge amount of sway in the council, and if you don't represent those interests, you're not seeing the halls of power, and that's what we're dealing with. And oftentimes we see that play out in city council when agenda. One of the issues that I have in particular is that we no longer, citizens, part of the public, can no longer agendize items for city council to listen to, and there's a reason for that. And it's exactly what we're talking about. If you are not part of this network of people, you will not have any real influence. And that's a real problem here in Long Beach.
Speaking of, I actually have a quote that I believe you had tweeted that I thought is really relevant to this idea that says, instead of working for working families, city council members put them and their tax money on the hook for the profits of the ultra wealthy. Here is neoliberalism at its work. So what do you mean by that? Neoliberalism.
So neoliberalism is this ideology, this economic ideology that if we subject ourselves to the free market, that everything will be okay, right? There's no amount of there's nothing that can't be solved by capitalism. There's nothing that can't be solved by us commodifying things. And I think Long Beach is an excellent example where that falls apart, right? We have a huge housing issue, right? Because we've commodified this idea that if you want to live in a house under shelter, you need to pay for it. And people are going to grow wealthy, and people are going to grow profit from you needing housing, from you needing shelter. And you can see here, right here, there's high rises everywhere built, and there's no affordable housing for people. And what happens when that's the case? People are pushed out. Gentrification occurs, and working people who have to live paycheck to paycheck are pushed out of the city. There will be a time, if we don't change something, that Long Beach will no longer be a city for the working class. Long Beach is going to be someplace like Malibu. It's going to be a place like Santa Monica, where we don't have access to the things that we need, and we need to move somewhere else. This is going to be a place for the ultra rich, the ultra wealthy, and nobody else. And we need to stop that. Long Beach has a proudful tradition of working people. Dock workers built this city. The working class built this city, and I think that we should take it back.
It's interesting. And I mean, speaking of housing, I mean, we just, I'm not sure if the convention center is in District 1 or a neighboring area, but, we housed thousands of migrant children in that facility per the request of Biden themselves, in which that, again, was a unanimous decision by the city council to allow and enter into that contract with the HHS. And coincidentally, just outside of our studio, there is a plane full of migrant children being transported elsewhere in Southern California. In terms of decisions like this that are nationally relevant, I think it draws attention to the fact that city council is an important position, considering that Long Beach is not a small city. It's not a small town. We're a big city. We have a big impact. We have one of the largest ports in North America. And clearly we seem to be a hotspot for a lot of national decisions like housing hundreds of thousands of migrant children. What are your thoughts on the decision-making process that went into that, and what might you have done differently, if anything? Yeah, so again, that goes back to this if you have certain ideas about the way the world should work, then you're allowed city council. If you sway from those at all, if you have different ideas, then you're not allowed. And that's just the way that the network works. If I were on city council, I would want to know what exactly, I would want to have more transparency, for one, about what is happening with the children, what the conditions are, and that was something that wasn't established from the get-go. Oftentimes, a lot of these things are made in the middle of the night. Nobody had access to the decision-making process. Nobody was really given much information. Now, I believe that if we want to get rid of this issue in particular, where we're dealing with large amounts of immigration issues that are, and all the things that come out of it, we have to establish a process where we are not interfering with the political processes of other countries, right? And in Long Beach, as you said, is an international city. Garcia has direct connections with Joe Biden. And if I were a part of council, I'd want him to use that personal connection to say, hey, these are the things that we want to see happen at the national level, the international level. We should not be sending troops in Afghanistan, for instance, right? We should pull them out as soon as we can. I would want that amount of influence exerted if we are this international city that Mayor Garcia likes to say that we are. Let's use that. Let's use that for the good of not just our citizens, but for the citizens across the globe, because they're intimately connected. So that's what I would have liked to see. But unfortunately, we don't have that kind of system. We don't have a lot of political diversity, and we don't have a lot of people standing up for what's right. So, if you were to be elected and to break through that, essentially good old boys club, how would you work with these people that, operate in that system that you are so adamantly critical of? Yeah, so I think there are definitely things that we can connect with. I think that sometimes city council has progressive ideas that we can push forward. And my job as what I believe is the most progressive city council candidate would be to push them more on those issues. I want to see their constituency actively engaged in the process. I want to see them at every city council meeting. I want to see a more political representation exerted and influence on these people. So while I definitely value working relationships, I think that has to be tested through more engagement with the political processes on behalf of the people here in Long Beach. But speaking of engagement, I think we have a question of our own, which, if my eyes will not fail me, it says strong policing and only perpetuates poverty and therefore increases crime. In order to cut crime, you need to eliminate poverty. That's exactly my position. Poverty is at the root of crime, not just here, but in capitalist countries all over the world. What we notice, and studies will back this, the safest communities aren't the ones with the most police, right? The safest communities are the ones with the most resources. If communities are strong, if the youth feel like they have a future, if they are well educated, if they have jobs that pay well, crime rarely happens, especially the type of violent crime. I want to highlight one community in particular here in District 1, Washington neighborhood. This is a community that's been plagued with gang violence, with shootings, with all kinds of horrible issues.
It's no surprise that the Washington community was recently found to have upwards of 80% poverty rate for that community. Now, our opponent Mary Zendejas has announced the strategy is to send more cops inside to do these walking patrols, and the idea being that they'll connect with the community. Once again, that doesn't get at what the root of it is. So long as poverty is there, so long as people don't have a future, feel like they don't have a future, they're not engaged politically, they're going to turn to crime, because that's what happens all across the world. So yeah, I completely agree with the commenter there, and that's one of my top priorities. One of our slogans is "No poor people in a rich city." Long Beach is a rich city, so there should be no poor people.
Yeah. It looks like we have another question. So I mean, apparently they're making the point that there is a issue and a crisis of the unhoused population within District 1. So how do you feel about this idea that it's a crisis? I feel like there's a lot of sensationalizing of this idea that it's a problem for everyday citizens that are housed. Yep. But aside from, maybe a little bit of that back and forth and a little bit of the I don't know, judgment in that, how do you plan, or are you planning on addressing issues of the unhoused? Yeah,
so what I think that commenter is commenting on is something that I can see what the argument is, right? In District 1, there's a park, Gumbinar Park. I don't know if anybody here watching is familiar, but that park in particular has a homeless population that is living there. And that's not what parks are for, right? Parks are not for people to sleep in and to live in. They're there for communities to engage and to get to know each other. And it does present certain health issues. It does present problems. But what the city council has tried to do is to police them, right? They've tried to kick them off of the street. They've tried to arrest them. And that's not how we should engage. What we should do, as I said it earlier, is make sure that they have the resources that they need. This is one thing in particular. We want to make sure that we grow a robust mental health program, a robust drug rehabilitation program as well, to make sure that people who need it, who can have the resources and the tools to live lives that are healthy and dignified, right? Because sleeping in the street is not a dignified way to live. And I see it every day on my way to work, leaving my apartment complex. I see people living in the streets, and it's an embarrassment. Everybody shouldn't be embarrassed about the state that we find ourselves in, where people don't have a home. And what we plan to do is, like I said, make sure that we have quality job training programs, people can get on their feet. And if they need more than that, then we also have fully funded resources. And we can't do that so long as 40% of our general revenue budget is given to the police. So we need to do more. So the homelessness, I understand what you were saying in terms of the sensationalized. That's a hard word. But yeah, I do think it's an issue, and I think it's not just an economic and political issue; it's a moral issue that we have to solve.
Well, I think that's an interesting point too. The idea that these issues are real issues, not just political, talking points. Yeah. So having, whether it's a sense of personal ethics or greater morals, it sounds like that's a priority for you to translate that into your policy. Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of it, what I think our politics should be about is humanizing people. And I don't think that there's anything humanizing about poverty. I don't think there's anything humanizing about having to live paycheck to paycheck. I don't think that there's anything humanizing about fearing that if you lose your job, you're going to end up without a home. I'm a working man. I'm a family man. And I can't imagine what it would be like to live with that constant day-to-day stress. And at times I've had to deal with that experience. And that's something that I don't think city council members understand, because they're not part of the same class, right? We're working people. Where if you stop working, you're not going to have a home. You're not going to have benefits. You're not going to have the things that you need to survive. And I think it's time the city council, District 1 in particular, who struggles with poverty, has somebody that represents them and their interests and is willing to take on the interests of banking, of landlords, of developers that just want profit. It's a system of corporate greed and profit that's at work here in Long Beach.
So when you're not on the campaign trail, what do you do for work?
So I'm a legal assistant, but that's not necessarily my passion. My passion has really been organizing. One of the things that I've done for a long time since I've gotten to Long Beach has been put on these programs where we're actually pulling resources together and going out and feeding people who are homeless currently. That's what I like to do. I have community members who are strong and have the willingness to go out and engage with people, and it's been successful, and I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of organizations in Long Beach that do some really great work. It just seems like there's sometimes a disconnect between the larger local government and these organizations getting the support they need. Do you find that within the organizations that you work with to address supporting the unhoused community here in Long Beach, do you get a lot of support from local government?
No, not at all. And I don't think you would have a local government want to support these kinds of groups in the first place, because as I said, they have a different slate of priorities. Their priorities isn't necessarily to keep people engaged in the political process. Their priorities are not to make sure that people have material goods. I think City Council has already shown that their main priority is to make sure the profit machine is working for the people that got them in those positions in the first place. That what I am running on is let's upend that system. Let's start to work towards something that is different fundamentally. And as I stated earlier, it's about humanizing people. It's about making sure that poverty is eliminated and eradicated from our communities. And let's build strong, wealthy, healthy communities together.
Good. So, I mean, looks like we have another question. It seems like your eyes are way better than mine. So.
Yeah, as a District 1 resident, Mary's and us is weekly meetings to hear our voice, and we ask for more safety. Would you be doing the same? Where do you plan to get the money to provide the free resources? How will you address the issue of people not wanting ...
It's a little. I think it might be a little bit longer than we can show on the screen. Okay. But I mean, they make a good point of these are really exciting ideas for the people that need them.
Yes.
But a lot of people are going to make the argument of where are we going to pay? Where are we going to get the money to pay for this?
Yes. Yeah. So there's sometimes that conversation gets a little bit convoluted without having all the sources of revenue. But as I stated earlier, the general budget. These are things that we as city council members specifically have the ability to proportion and decide where those go. As I stated earlier, Long Beach Police Department has a 40% share of that budget, which I think is unacceptable given that crime rates have been as large as they've ever been. So they haven't even been effective at doing what the sole thing that they're supposed to be doing. So a lot of these programs that I'm talking about, specifically things like free public transportation, if we wanted to get rid of fares, that would cost about $8 million. That's a sliver of the amount of the Long Beach Police Department. We can just decide, let's take that $8 million straight from the police department. And public transportation, as I stated earlier, would mean an $8 million cash infusion to the economy. That means more small businesses are supported. That means cars are off the streets. That means that money is kept in the hands of working people. And as I stated, that means less crime. And we don't talk about that enough, how the benefits of investing in working people is what's going to cut crime. Mary Zendejas, I commend her for doing those weekly meetings. I think that's an excellent idea, and I will absolutely continue that trend. Actually, I would want to expand it. Currently, she does Zoom meetings. I want to expand it to social media. I want to expand the process. I want to make sure that we get as many people involved in the political process as possible. So it's definitely important to do that.
I mean, actually, I think after the new implementation of the 2022 budget, the police department is now going to have the majority of the general fund. I think it's moving up to 64%.
That's even worse. But nobody talks about where we're going to get that money from, right? When we talk about policing expanding their budget, no one ever says how are we going to pay for that. But it's only when working people would benefit from the budget that we then, we want to fine tune every demand, and we want to make sure that every cent is accounted for beforehand. There are a lot of ways to fund the types of programs, and cities have done it before. This is not a one-off crazy idea. Kansas City, for instance, just made their public transportation program free.
Wow.
And it's a similar size city, a similar size public transportation system. So it's not impossible. It's about where our priorities are as city council members and as a public.
And so specifically on making public transportation free for people, Long Beach Transit being a private company, how does that work? Having a person or a group or organization within the private sector contribute in that way?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit complicated in terms of those kinds of questions, and we would have to establish, I think, a more robust system of analysts, using city analysts to be able to understand those and navigate those legal questions. But we have those resources, and I know that it's possible to do. It's just, again, it's about the willingness to be able to engage in that process, and things are going to they might get mucky. There might be people that are going to be opposed, wealthy interests are going to be opposed, but it's about the political will. And do you want somebody in office that has that political will to make sure that people have their needs met? We'll see.
Got it. And so, if people are interested in getting more involved in your campaign, or, just still wanting to decide how they feel about your campaign, how can they get to know you better?
Yeah, so we have a pretty extensive social media accounts going on. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we have a TikTok, and you can follow us at Steven Estrada D1. It's pretty simple. It's just my first last name and then D1 for District 1. And I like to post about my campaign. I like to give TikToks about explaining some of the ideas that I have. I like to link you to petitions. Right now, we have a petition to make Long Beach Transit free. Right, we want to bring attention to this issue. You can visit my site at stevenestrada.org, so you can learn a bit more about my platform. You can learn a bit more about where I stand on a lot of the issues.
It's funny that you're talking about the TikTok thing. Alicia, our co-host, has been trying to get us to, develop and getting at the TikTok thing. It's just such a challenge.
It's hard. It's a hard thing. Like I said, I was telling you earlier, 1 minute TikTok for me takes about 30 minutes. So I'm not the best with time resources.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you guys are interested, convince Alicia, and we'll start, joining the bandwagon. But it's a challenge, so we're getting there. Yeah. But do you have any other last points that you want to, get out and let the people know?
Yeah. So, I mean, this weekend, actually, on Saturday, our campaign and our team is going to go out and talk with the bus riders and see how they feel about what a free public transportation system would mean to them. Not just the free public transportation, but a system that works 24/7, that has more bus routes, safer bus stops, and things of that sort. So if you are interested and you want to get involved in what we're doing, reach out on any one of our social media accounts. Again, Steven Estrada D1, or visit on the website and sign up to volunteer, donate, stevenestrada.org. Thank you.
All right, well, great. It's been awesome having you and getting to know you. So this has been the first episode of Meet the Candidate. Hopefully there will be more to come. I am Daniel Drake, and this has been Long Beach Local News.
Thank you.